Hello, everyone. This is Henry Schneider with the Business Performance Podcast. And today it's my pleasure to talk with Ryan Jones from Skaled Consulting, who's the Director of Product Strategy. So, Ryan, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Henry. Glad to be here. Super excited.
Wonderful. So, Ryan, first off, why don't you tell everybody what Skaled Consulting is and the types of services they provide and the types of customers they work with?
Yeah, for sure. So Scale Consulting is what I like to call a strategy enablement firm. There are a lot of strategy consulting firms out there, but where Scale really thrives and our ethos is really around tactical support, right? So we function heavily in like a change management capacity, but again, focus more on like sales and sales operations and marketing. Even in the tech space as well, there's a huge epidemic of companies that are buying technology but struggling with adoption. That's where we come into play. We help map and plan strategy from really an anticipatory standpoint on driving widespread adoption. So Scale right now, we're headquartered in Austin, Texas. We have offices in New York. I'm located here in Atlanta, Georgia. And then we also have a presence in British Columbia. So a growing company. I think we're meeting a huge demand in the market, and we work from everything from companies from startup, scale up, mid-market, enterprise, very flexible, and we've got some practitioner level, what I would call practitioner level consultants. So these are like former VP of sales, former VP of ops. So I mean, these people that work for us, they've actually done the job, and we've helped a lot of companies, hundreds at this point.
So how long has the Skaled been in business now?
Skaled was started back in 2012 by my CEO, Jake Dunlap.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been on board for about a year now. It actually will be a year in about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's been an awesome journey.
Yeah, and I see Jake he's online a lot with live podcasts and all, so he's a busy guy.
Jake is super busy. Jake is global. Jake is actually, I think he's in Dublin right now working with one of our large enterprise clients currently. But yeah, he's actually inspired me to get more social and expanding our presence. So that's been a huge reason for our growth, man. I mean, everybody's on social media, everybody's on LinkedIn, everybody's on Instagram. So he's really doing a really great job of leveraging those platforms effectively.
And I was just looking at I guess the post that you commented about with, I guess the question is, do you do cold call, or you prefer social media as a way to reach out to people? And cold calling, what's your opinion on that?
I mean, I believe in a blended approach. I think omni-channel, we're calling it now, is a good approach. I mean, it all depends, right? It depends on where your audience is, and there's some folks that prefer a call. There's some that are active on social. So it all depends. I think every company should have a blended approach to engagement. I think that's the best strategy.
Yeah, it's to me, it's even much more important to be able to actually see somebody you're talking to and have build that relationship visually, as opposed to email or social media or the telephone call. So
I agree.
Yeah. So what's the importance now with the Scale's clients for quality? What do they look for in terms of quality?
The clients themselves, or
yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do Scale's clients look for as far as quality? I think it's more like, so we are a performance-based organization. So a lot of companies right now, they're not looking for anecdotal data, right? They're not looking for those types of insights. They want concrete data. They want measurable results. They want sustainability, right? I think there has been a time where consulting firms and training organizations, again, nothing against them, I think they have their purpose in creating a level of awareness, but companies now want a partner that can work hand in hand with them over the longer period of time, because no matter the technology or system, those things are tools, right? And they aid in change. But for most, I mean, where companies are really struggling and want better quality and engagement and support is the long term. It's like, helping them to change behaviors, right? Because we're all creatures of habit,
Mhm.
and it takes time to change a habit. So they
Definitely.
want, a comprehensive plan, they want incremental performance measures, and they want long-term sustainable results, and that's what we delivered for them.
All right. So when you look at your customer base or even potential customers, what are some of the biggest myths or misconceptions out there associated with quality or business performance that you're trying to solve?
That technology does it all. That there's a magic technology that's, that's the plug, play, walk away. And it's not the case. I mean, globally, companies are spending billions of dollars on technology nowadays, and they're expecting that to solve. Well, I mean, if you look at the studies out there, and there was actually an interesting article from Harvard Business Review that basically claimed that over 90% of companies out there really don't have a plan for long-term adoption, implementation, and to really to receive ROI through technology. And it's really not it's not a tech problem, it's a culture problem. And so
Mhm.
those are the things that we solve for. And so there's just a lot of assumptions thinking, oh, we'll just plug this tech in here and plug that tech in here and it's all going to magically work. That's just not reality, even though we want it to be that way. We want the quick fix all the time.
Yeah, I know. I worked with a client several years ago that spent $300,000 on a tool that was shelfware. You know,
Exactly.
it's
Well, you
just
just said it.
amazing.
It's a tool. It's a tool, and it's like that with any tool. The tool is only as good as the person using that tool, and their willingness to use it. Um, but again, if it's not part of your day-to-day habit, day-to-day behavior, then it's going to be tough.
Yeah. So how do you? Well, I don't know. Maybe you're not doing it, but the Scaled. How do they approach talking to a client and guide them into the proper selection and purchase of tools and technology?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways, but it really overall it starts with a anticipatory plan and framework, right? You have to get them to think about one, their why.
Mhm.
Oftentimes change doesn't stick because the why is not strong enough, right? And so what we focus on is, okay, we want to take a deep dive on the what, the how, and the why, but then also let's translate that into a quantitative measure. So we have to quantitatively measure the current state. That's where it all starts. If you don't understand the cost of where you are today, then you're going to struggle to really see ROI, because you have to start with quantifying the cost of where you are today, and then you have to create a benchmark or plan of the ideal state, and then measure the delta between those two.
Mhm.
Companies struggle there because oftentimes they don't know what to measure, and we can help them with that. We help guide them through what to measure. There's a cost associated with every process. I don't care what it is. And people will debate me on it, but I've proven it many, many times over. There's a cost associated with every single thing we do, and we have the ability to surface that out for you.
Yeah, that's very important,
Yep.
and you have to tie it all back to where do you want to be when you grow up? What are your long-term goals and objectives? And those have to be quantified as well,
Yep.
because sometimes you spend time. Oh, we just want to grow. We want to spend a month. Okay, well, how
So
do you know you
vague.
did that?
Yeah, yeah. And so we try to hold our clients accountable to that. We can't make ambiguous statements like that. We need to define what that means. You need to clearly define your vision and what that looks like. And you know what I mean? You
Yeah,
have to remove as much of the ambiguity as possible. So again, we're very clear on the why, and then you can garner support cross-functionally as well. Once everybody understands and everybody buys into that, um, it makes the barriers and resistors to change much, much less.
yeah, and once you've got something that you can quantify, you can show numbers and display
1000%.
graphically. That speaks very loudly, and
Yeah,
hard to say, hey, something's wrong. All I can do now is criticize your analysis.
exactly, exactly. Because it's subjective at that point. You know what I mean? We move from such subjectivity to objectivity when you're able to quantify it, right? And yeah, that creates a very, very compelling argument.
Okay, so I'd like to now kind of explore with you what you did a couple of years so back with your sales team and how you turned that around and really improve the efficiency. So could you kind of relate what you did there?
Yeah. It was it was fun, but the results were significant, man. Very gratifying endeavor there.
So what did you do?
So it was funny that I had fought against leadership for a very long time. So I was actually a new official leader with a very large global ERP firm, software firm, right? So 13,000 plus employees,
Oh, boy.
locations in 23 countries. I somewhat inherited a team that was underperforming. Okay. And so this was a team that I would consider, I guess, multi-generational, multi-tenured, multi-dynamic. The tenure of the sales team ranged from 5 years up to 20 years,
Mm,
right? So as you can imagine, a mix of sales philosophy and background and experience and, sacred cows and all types of stuff, right? So basically, what I was able to achieve with the team, and I'll get into like the how behind it, but within a year's time, I was able to improve their sales performance by over 45%. I was able to improve their forecast accuracy. Now, this is something that's super elusive for a lot of sales leaders. They don't know, they still don't know how to forecast accurately. I improved forecast accuracy over 40%. I increased professional services revenue over 200%. In the software space, oftentimes the pro serve revenue is like 4x the license revenue. So that's huge for a company. And then able to improve collaboration, reduce cost of sale through efficiency modeling, efficiency processes. So did that in about a year's time.
okay. So did you use any models or tools from that, or did you just kind of figure it out yourself?
No, so I guess it was actually a mixture. The first thing I start with, and so I tell everyone the most critical part of any sales or change management process is your discovery. You you have to do a very thorough and deep dive discovery and analysis, right? So this was I dedicated about 2 to 4 weeks to understanding every process across sales. Of course, my team, sales team, sales operations, because these are cross-functional units that we worked with,
Good.
right? Um, it was systems, it was sales engineers or systems engineers and professional services. So those were the four groups, right?
Mhm.
Sales, pro serve, engineers, and pro services. And actually, forgot about one, our SDR, so the development reps, lead dev,
Mhm.
understood each and every role intimately and how they interconnected, how those departments work together, and then understood the gaps in the process, right?
Mhm.
I take a very value centric approach, okay? Very value centric approach, meaning I'm not only looking at what you can do for me, sales ops team or SDR team or engineers team. I'm thinking about and I'm asking you, how can we make what you do easier and more efficient and more effective? You know what I mean? What do you need from us? Right. So that was a big part of it. And so there's a methodology that I call S.M.A.C.M, and this is something that I've actually trademarked. I know it sounds funny, but it's a real thing. It's something that I've done for years, but I didn't know exactly what to call it. So S.M.A.C.M stands for standardize, measure, assess, control, and manage. Right? All of those areas are very interdependent on one another. Okay,
Mhm.
so you will never be able to manage something that you can't effectively control. You won't be able to control something that you can't assess, right? You cannot assess something that you have not effectively measured, and you'll never be able to measure something that you have not standardized, right?
Mhm.
Standardization is the key. And I've just noticed working with companies of all sizes, whether it's, startup, mid-market enterprise, they all have people problems and and they're challenged with how those various really silo groups interact with one another, right? So S.M.A.C.M is the
Mhm.
methodology that I utilize to bring those groups together, bring a level of standardization so we can effectively measure and assess and understand, okay, these are the real challenges. This is the quantified impact of it. This is maybe where we need to pivot or change our process because it's negatively impacting the business. And then once we come up with our improvement process and we actually make the change, then we want to be able to control and manage that for the long term, right?
So
Because we
how,
don't want to go back to that previous state again. And that's what happens a lot of times.
yeah. Yeah. So what do you do to kind of make it stick so people don't backslide?
Yeah. So the things that I did, so I did a couple things specifically, right? I created a structured discovery framework, right? There's a lot of people going through like their discovery and needs analysis with customers. Every rep is doing something different.
Mhm.
How can you measure from a qualitative standpoint what's working and what's not, right? Because you're always going to have those reps that are, the talented ones or the more skilled, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then you'll have ones that maybe that are not so much. Well, creating a standardized discovery kind of levels the playing field. You know what I mean? I actually took one of my poorest performing reps who was on a performance improvement plan,
Mhm.
turned his behavior around, and he ended up being the top performer
Mhm.
across the team over 300% because he had a willingness. Now he had to be committed to trying something new.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
You know what I'm saying? And then just like with a business, how we were talking about earlier, you have to quantify the impact. You have to quantify, the impact of the current state of the business before you can ever talk about change. Well, you have to do that individually as well, right? So creating that uh, st- structured discovery framework also created a structured collaborative framework. So when you're working between lead dev, engineers, professional services, things can really get lost in translation, especially when you
Wow.
have a very long sales cycle that's, you know, 3 months, 6 months, up to a year. So many things can fall through the cracks, and you better not be trying to dig through your CRM to find this information because that's like throwing it into the abyss. Like it's,
Yeah, okay.
and I'm not, bashing CRM. CRM has a purpose, but when it comes to like a collaborative, complex sale, it's not an effective tool. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not the primary tool that you want to be using. So I had to create a framework that was able to translate information between four different groups that spoke different languages,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, that's important. Definitions and words are very critical.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to have one place to go. Like what they were doing before I took over is, they were really rushing to the demo because they thought the demo, oh, we demo the product, that's going to sell it, right? People are demoing prematurely and they don't even have a business case. And then you're pulling in resources from other departments to perform functions that the customer's not ready for, the deal's not going to close. And I mean, again, there's a cost associated with every process, right?
Right.
And so if you mismanage that process, you're mismanaging um, company resources, right? And so the key is to get everyone on the same page as far as the information share. I shouldn't have to go and listen to an hour-long phone call to try and decipher and pull out what the important points were. You know what I mean? I shouldn't have
Yeah.
to dig through an hour-long or 2 hour-long demo to find the things that are important to me. No, there needs to be a framework that information that's important to me, it's captured in that one specific place, and I go there every single time, and I know the 5 or 10 things that I need to look at that are important to my responsibility area, and then I can do my job more
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah. No,
But there's so many companies doing that, man. They're relying on like recordings, and like I don't have a time to sit and listen to an hour-long recording and figure out if there's something there or not.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially if you've been through the meeting already, who wants to sit through that all the second time listening to it?
Exactly, exactly. But I'm telling you, man, there are thousands of companies that are doing the same thing, right? And again, I'm not saying that the tools that are out there that allow you to record um, meetings and things like that, they're not helpful. They're helpful for coaching, but they are not effective for collaboration, not cross-functional collaboration. Those tools create a lot of inefficiency. It raises your cost of sale. and it just creates, again, too much subjectivity, and it
Mm,
just slows things down, and it's
yeah.
just not productive at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I know from my personal experience, what I found is that the biggest gap is between sales and marketing and the development team.
Yeah.
Because because the sales guys are you're focused on closing the deal and you promise whatever you can do to get it done. Then you come back and say, oh, by the way, we need this feature or functionality in the next release. Everybody goes, no, we can't.
Yeah. There has to be some cross-functional accountability. I was going to say collaboration, but in the collaborative process and the collaborative framework, there has to be a layer of accountability as well. Those things that are required from each area to do their job effectively, right? And then you also have to create what I did is I created a qualitative scoring metric. I wasn't one of those managers that over-indexed on number of phone calls, number of dials, talk time and all that stuff. Again, not saying it's not important, but there are things that are more important, especially when you are in a much more complex sales environment, right? There are
Right.
qualitative things that you have to deliver on, and all you do is convert that to a score. And if you start measuring reps by that, their behaviors will change because they know that, hey, they're going to get a ding here on this portion. Or if you didn't, for me, it was like if you didn't have a minimum qualitative score of a 3, you couldn't demo. So if I looked at your scorecard and it was a 2 and you were scheduling a demo, we had a very different conversation. So again, it was a matter of accountability, and really holding the line there. You know what I mean? And making sure everybody complied with those standards, and those that couldn't, I mean, they were realigned to other roles within the organization if possible. Because
Yeah,
I feel
and that kind of relates to this other article I saw that you commented about KPIs not really helping. And that's because that's what people have always measured in the past. They continue to measure. It's
like,
their
yes,
vanity measures. They make you feel good, but they really give
yes.
you no insight into what's actually going on.
That is the truth, man. And then you create again a culture of people that chase that number. Well, I made the number of calls, and they can use that as an excuse, right? So
Oh,
when you're having a coaching session and you're telling them where they're falling short, they're gonna go back and say, well, I made the calls you told me to make. I talked the time that you told me to make. You know what I mean? I had the number of appointments, but again, there was no quality that went into that. So
yeah.
again, we can't focus so much on the quantitative. And for me, back when I was actually an individual contributor selling, it didn't take me as many calls as it took, some of my peers to get an appointment. It didn't take me as many attempts to close because I was focused on quality over quantity. So it's an unfair measure sometimes when you say, well, you know, Johnny made 50 calls and you made 10. Well, how many appointments did I hold and actually move the needle versus
Right.
the 50 calls? It's like you
Yeah.
got to think about those things.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is it's, when you start measuring things, if you don't haven't thought it out completely, you drive dysfunctional behavior.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. All right, Ryan, can we spend a few moments talking about just, the experience you had growing up, maybe in your career that still influences how you approach business today?
Yeah. Man, I would say, man, as far as growing up, my dad, it was one thing, and he's still alive today. He and my mom still together. Happy about that. But he always taught me to not to be afraid to stand alone, especially if you believe that you're right. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
He didn't
Yeah.
raise me to be necessarily conformist. Now, I wasn't a rebel by any stretch.
Mhm.
Trust me, I've served my country. I'm an Air Force veteran, so I understand protocol. I understand following the rules. I understand those things, but I also value independent thought. You know what I mean? Like being innovative and figuring out new ways to solve problems. Again, if it's efficient, if it's effective. Um, in my professional career, I've had many roles, Henry, where I really lacked resources. You know what I mean? I didn't have marketing or I didn't have lead gen. I didn't even have strong leaders. You know what I mean? I had the typical bean counting managers. How many calls did you make? How many appointments? But they offered no value. They were people that I called a cultural authority, but they weren't an asset to me, right? And so I adopted the philosophy of whatever resource I lack, I will become that, right? I will put in the time, I'll put in the hours. I've definitely educated myself over the years, gotten smarter, learned new skills, went to some of the best schools in the nation to equip myself because I knew there were going to come more other times where I didn't have the resources. But are you going to quit? Right? Where's the resolve? Where's the resiliency? Where's the determination? Where's the innovation of thought? So that's been huge for me. And man, even in like my military days, man, I've just learned to value diversity of thought, right? Problem solving. Like I've been wired that way for so long, man. So it's like, hey, either I'll find a way, or I'll create a way. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just I don't know any other way. I don't know any other way to operate. And so any team that I lead, I try to instill that in them because I'm such a believer in humanity. I'm such a believer in the abilities innately that we have as humans that we just don't tap into sometimes. You know what I mean? We settle and we allow things to continue to stay the same, the status quo. You know, I did a webinar the other day and a guy asked me, he's like, Ryan, what do you think the future of change management is? That's a big question. But I gave him a simple answer. And I said, the future of change management is whatever you want it to be because it's up to us, right?
Yeah.
Care what the system is, what the structure is, we created it. We're all behind everything, right? And so that's just what I believe, man. That's just truly what I believe, and it's been in me for the last decade, I guess.
It's too bad there's not a whole bunch more people just like you with that attitude. I mean,
Well, you know what, Henry, I'm gonna try and raise them up. You know what I mean? I want to connect with. That's why I took this opportunity for this podcast, and I want to reach as many people as possible and let them know that you don't have to settle for where you are today. You know what I mean? Think about if we would have done that 20, 30, 50 years ago. Like, just look at how far we've come, man. I'm just so excited and optimistic about the future if people would just allow themselves to go into that creative space, and not be so distracted by all the noise, man. We have so much untapped potential. And I'm going to do my part, even if I don't see it come to fruition, I'm going to just do my role.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy for somebody to be in your position with the lack of resources and just get demoralized and frustrated and just give up.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen. I look back at some of my former colleagues that are still in the same roles they've been in for 15 years or so. God bless them. But yeah, I'm just not wired that way, man. I'm not wired that way. And anybody that has the willingness to change, that's the first step, right? That's the first step. Um, you know, um, and if you don't have that, and I guess maybe you are lost cause, but you got to be willing to move forward even while you're afraid. Fear paralyzes people, the fear of the unknown, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But I've just learned, man, hey, put one foot in front of the other, shaking. I don't know if you remember the Wizard of Oz, remember the cowardly lion? one one foot in front of the other, man, trembling in fear, but you just got to do it. You got to
I
do it.
mean, you start bringing some order into it out of the chaos, and you get out of your comfort zone. Everybody gets upset, but if you apply what you know, you can start putting some structure in there, and it helps.
That is the truth, man. That's the truth. And what I want to do too, Henry, is, raise up a generation of leaders that value something that they value silence. You know what I mean? Like nowadays, things are just so noisy,
Oh,
and a lot of the insight that I get and vision that I get and innovation and things like that come from silence, just times of silence, being able to put that phone down, close the computer, and just be, just be, man. Whether it's sitting in nature, outside, on a walk, people are afraid of silence for some reason.
yeah.
You know what I mean? They feel like, well, that space is a void, so I better fill it with something. No, that space is an opportunity, and it has value. If you can tap into a higher intelligence, it can be life changing, man. And I'm telling you, it has been for me. So I think those new conscious leaders and the leaders that are willing to go that extra mile for their people, and this is really a part of who they are. They're going to value silence. They're going to value those times of being able to unplug and hear with other ears that are not their natural ears.
Well, yeah, and this problem is only going to get worse because we're going from 3G to 4G was a multiplier of 10, 4G to 5G is 100
Yeah.
multiplier. We're
Yeah.
going to get, pretty soon it's going to be so much information that it's just you can't digest any of it.
Yeah, I already feel like it's kind of there, man. I feel like we are like drowning in information, but starving for wisdom. But either way, so this is even the other positive thing. So we got all this information, all this data, all this stuff flying at us. Guess what? All we got to do is this: just put it down. It's a
Yeah,
choice. You know
right.
what I'm saying? It's
Exactly.
absolutely a choice.
I know. I mean, how often you go into a restaurant these days and you see people eating together, but nobody's interacting. They're all on their phones.
Yeah, yeah. Even what's funny, even and this is something I've really paid attention to, Henry. Even when you see people by themselves, they're still like facing the phone. They have their AirPods in or whatever things in their ears. They're still not alone. What I've practiced is when I go and I eat out a lot because I travel a lot, right? And I'm by myself.
Yeah.
I will oftentimes, if I'm driving, I'll leave my phone in the car
Mm.
or I'll leave it in my bag or something. And I do that on purpose because I'm conditioning myself to be okay with my thoughts.
Mhm.
I'm conditioning myself to be okay with silence. I'm conditioning myself to enjoy the experience of where I am. People don't know how to be present because guess what? They haven't practiced. You
Right.
will do whatever you practice, not what you want. You'll do what you practice. And so those are things that I think are very important, and they allow me to focus and they really allow me to get more done because during the day when a lot of things are coming at me, I'm able to block that out and dial in. And it's almost like I feel guilty because I get so much done, and that subconscious is kicking in. It's like, oh, you shouldn't be done now. You should do more work. You got to do more work. We're programmed that way. But that's one thing that I think people can do just to practice something very simple and practical. The next time you go out to lunch or have a cup of coffee by yourself, leave your phone in the car
Mm.
and just see how that feels. Be okay with whatever thoughts go through your mind, whatever. It's okay, you know. And I think it's a huge opportunity, and people will begin to see the more you do that, the more fresh ideas you'll get. You'll get
Mhm.
solutions to problems that have been bothering you for
Oh,
weeks.
yeah. I mean, yeah,
Even when I'm in my
these things
car,
are
I just
working
turn
in
the
the back of your head the whole time, but with that noise, you can't hear it.
That is true. That is true. There is a language of silence that has a lot of value. Even riding in the car, I'm going downtown Atlanta, and it's always traffic.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I know
uh,
that.
oftentimes I turn the radio off. I
Mm.
don't want to hear anything. I just don't. I don't want to hear that. So yeah, man. There's just the world is changing, man, and we need answers. We need answers. We need solutions to problems, and it can't all come from our experience. Because you think about it, how much experience can you really have, right? There has to be some knowledge and wisdom and insight that comes from somewhere else, man. And I've been practicing this for years and I've had great results. So I'm not telling you something I read in a book. I'm not telling you something that someone told me. This is my life, man. This is my life. And I'm not saying I mastered it and I'm this guru. These are just things that I've practically put into order and place in my life and they've gotten results. And so I'm going to keep doing it. I'm like, it's working. So
All right. So, what does success look like for Ryan Jones? Johns.
what does success look like? Fulfillment, man. Fulfillment. I live a purpose-driven life. You know what I mean? And so that's what matters to me is am I fulfilling the purpose that I believe that I have? Am I fulfilling the purpose that was put into me? You know what I mean? The thing that only I can do. There's one me. There's one you, right? There's no other, so I firmly believe we have a unique um purpose and specific purpose that we're on this life journey to achieve. And so for me, if I achieve that, that's success. It's not about the money, or anything like that. And then and also showing my kids the same thing. I have little ones as well, and I'm teaching them that same thing. It's
Mhm.
fulfill your purpose. It's not about where you go to school. It's not about where you work or anything like that. You have to be fulfilled in your purpose. That is success. And if I can bring value and enrich other people's lives, like that's for me, that's success.
Okay.
I think we were talking earlier, and one of the most gratifying statements a person can make in a conversation with me when I hear this, wow, I never thought about that. Wow,
Mhm.
I never saw it that way. It's those revelation moments, you know what I mean? Those aha
Yeah.
moments that to me matter, because if I can get you to think differently, we can probably impact your outcome. Perception is always reality, man. It's the
Yeah,
mental
yeah,
perception.
definitely. So
It drives
let's
behavior.
so let's circle back to Scaled here for a moment. So when customers come to Scale, what should they be considering when they evaluate Scaled against the competition?
Um, if they want to achieve long-term results, or if they just want to get like the best practices and do it on their own. And again, I shouldn't, maybe that's the wrong thing to say, but I've just seen a lot of consulting firms that, to me, they focus on, or they emphasize the obvious. You know what I mean? Like, we already know the problems, we know the challenges, right? And they give you best practices, right? They give you tips and tricks and hacks and all this stuff, and they come up with this comprehensive plan, but they expect you to execute it as a customer, right? When someone comes to Scaled, you should feel secure that you have a partner that will walk with you every step of the way, whether it's 3 months, 9 months, a year. We've got customers that we're on retainer with right now, right? We've got customers that we're providing them what we call fractional sales leadership. They haven't hired for a VP role or whatever that sales leadership position. We have consultants that are functioning in that role. So a company that will fill the gaps, man, and help a company even build the infrastructure, right?
Mhm.
Your ability to scale is really predicated on your infrastructure, right? If you have poor infrastructure and poor foundation, you're going to struggle to scale,
Yeah,
right? Right?
definitely.
You can always layer on, customization, but you have to have the core first. It's just like you look at manufacturing, look at an assembly line. They always start with a shell. They always start with that outer that frame, right? And
Yeah.
then they build on top of that. So yeah, man, tactical support is what we offer. We're not going to just deliver a plan and say, hey, have at it, good luck,
Mhm.
you know thank you for your business. Nope, we'll work with you as long as you want us to.
Okay. All right. So reflecting on over your career, if you had to start everything all over again from scratch, what would you do differently? What would you keep the same?
What would I do differently? I probably would have done another 4 years in the military.
Mhm.
That's probably one of the regrets that I have, is that I only did 4 years in the Air Force. They were probably best some of the best years of my life. Um, I probably should have done another. Probably should have served for another 4 years. Yeah,
Mhm.
but anything else, I don't think I would have changed, because I think every experience makes you who you are. You
Okay.
know what I mean? Every experience is so valuable. So I don't. That's the only thing I would have changed, and I would have probably sought out mentorship while I was in the military.
Okay.
That's
All
actually something I'm working on right now too, but that's a different conversation. But
right.
I have a passion for our young military, man. I really do. Like, I think there's so many programs out there for veterans, but there's not anything geared towards people that are still in. The best time to
Ah,
help a veteran is before they become a veteran, right? Help them
yeah.
plan and strategize way ahead of time. So that's a passion of mine. But yeah,
Okay. Well, first I'll say thank you so much for your service,
it was a
and
pleasure, man. It was a
and
pleasure.
we could just keep talking on and on and on, but we're running out of time. So, how can people contact you, Ryan, if they want to learn more?
Sure. You can reach me. My email is ryan.john. So it's RYAN dot Johns, JOHNS, at scaled.com, SKALED.com. Or I'm very, very easy to find on LinkedIn as well. Very active in the LinkedIn community. So those are ways to reach me pretty quickly. Inbox me, email me, be happy to talk for sure.
Okay. Well, wonderful, Ryan. You're a great storyteller. I really enjoyed all your different things and stories about process improvement and measuring, etc. Just wonderful.
Thank you, Henry.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Been a
So
pleasure
thank you
being
so
here.
much for today.
Thank you, sir.